let's talk about some of the mishaps, right? Where do we want to start? Okay, so I'll probably start with, let's talk about losing a truckload of beanbags. I mean, not a box of stuff that's got to show up at the conference, right? Just a box of goodies, a truckload, right, of beanbags, right? So we had branded beanbags scheduled to go to, maybe it was Nashville. I forget where it was, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was supposed to be delivered somewhere. And these were beanbags we got specifically branded with our logo, with the sole purpose of providing extra seating, obviously on the show floor and around the different areas, versus having your traditional, furniture and stuff like that. And then obviously it's twofold, right? You get to bring them back to the office and throw them around the office foyer and, things like that. Customers love to take that stuff home and you end up shipping them.
I love this idea.
People's homes, right? And beanbags show up all over the country in people's homes. But listen, so we'd ordered a whole stack of beanbags, and I'll never forget my events person, Veronica, coming to me going, we can't find the beanbags. We've lost the truckload of beanbags. And I won't mention which a delivery company did that, but it's a well-known one. With a tracking number and all. But so somebody in the United States of America has a truckload of Host Analytics branded. It's either been sold on the black market or they're in somebody's big theater. You know how sometimes homes have these built-in big theater, their own private theater built in their homes, right?
Somebody's selling them on Marketplace, Steph.
Who knows? But somebody has
branded.
Yeah. So, and it happened I think 2 weeks before the event, because you had to get stuff to the warehouse and things like that. And you had to, from a project timeline perspective, these things take time. You can't just go, okay, we'll just go and get another 50 done. Right.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't work
8 weeks, that. 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
10, 12 weeks, 12 weeks lead time. We ended up, I think, going to IKEA or somewhere. I forget where we ended up going, buying a whole bunch of plain beanbags and I think slapping on a cling or something that we were able to get a sticker or something. And that served the purpose. But
Well,
and
they
the
never showed up.
Never showed up. I'm telling you, somebody has a movie theater built in their home somewhere in the United States of America with, 20-something beanbags strewn all over the floor. That's the only thing I could think of. But
keep your eyes out, listeners. Keep your eyes out.
Yeah.
And if you have them, don't let us know.
I mean, not tragic. I mean, this hardly was tragic, guys. I mean, you can always, it was just a nice thing. I think we're always, as event people, trying to think of ways that we can do things a little bit different and creative and at these events and things like that. And the beanbag became, I think, synonymous with a lot of events over the years, right? It's that more casual, laid back kind of seating approach and things like that. And then customers love it. And then every employees love it. And then, everyone wants a beanbag. I mean, and by the way, these things aren't easy to goddamn ship either. Do you know how big the goddamn box is?
I was going to say, to ship around to customers.
They don't come individually boxed, right? So you've got that whole challenge. But that was one. The second one, so I'm known for having an event kit. I even had it on my wedding day.
I was going to say, you're like what do they call that person that's supposed to help you on your wedding day?
The wedding planner type thing.
Yeah.
No, I even had it on and I have one always in my house already packed, ready to go. But we would always create these event kits, even just to go to events and ship around. And they had everything you could possibly want, right? You think of it, I've got it, right? And I've got it even for females and I've got it for men too, right? Anything in this kit. So I think 15 minutes before my CEO was about to walk on stage for his opening keynote, he split his pants. So there's one or two things. A, pack an extra pair of pants. Let's right? But
I would
sometimes
hope.
you don't have 15 minutes to run all the way to
Right.
his room because
Especially if we're in Vegas, right?
if you're in
Yeah.
Vegas, it takes 15 minutes just to
Yep.
find the elevators, right? But, there's that. But I always of course, in my event kit is my little sewing kit, right? So I'm quite good at sewing. So drop your DAX. I've seen it all. Give me your pants. I got to sew them up, right? And then quick, you're on stage in 15 minutes. Buttons are another one. Everyone's losing a button, right? You're losing a button. Or you have a wardrobe malfunction of some sort. So that's happened many a time, which is why I always have this kit handy for all sorts of mishaps. So that was that one. Shall I keep going?
Hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah, I know
great.
you've got a couple more good ones, but I think the underlying theme here, Steph, is be prepared. Because shit will hit the fan. There will be surprises. You got to be prepared. You got to pivot, and you can't let them see you sweat.
Well, especially in events, I don't think people realize how high stress events are. I mean,
it's the third highest behind
Yes.
firemen and policemen. I think on the range. Yes, there is I think it is. I forget what it is this year, maybe, but it's either the third or fourth highest stressful job that you can have. After obviously our EMTs and things like that, right? I mean, obviously with COVID, maybe we're even more stressed. I don't know,
right?
But
it's so true. And I mean, I remember not sleeping. You didn't sleep not because I couldn't sleep, but because there's so much to do before an event. Like that moments. Like anybody who's planned a wedding, it's like 10 weddings in 3 days, right? I mean, that you're planning with a team and never enough team members to do it all. And I mean, the moment those events are done, you just want to crash, right? It's like, I'm going to have my glass of wine and I'm just going to go to bed and sleep for 5 days because it's exhausting.
Yeah, you're on and there's a lot riding on things. And I think, like I said earlier, right, you've got to have a great team of people to work with, right? A great bunch of vendors that support you, whether it's production, it's third party, it's whatever, right? But I think the best events are those that you have these aha shit moments, right? That nobody knows happened, right? And even if they do happen and people see it, it's how you react to them.
Yep.
Yeah. Which, brings me to my next one, which was the power outage, right? Let's talk about, we were at an event, one-day event in, I think it was Dallas, Texas. Now, I had never seen storms like I've seen in Texas, right? But this thing started at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it just happened to come down. This big thunderstorm, electrical storm happened just as opening keynote was starting. Well, the power went out, the hotel, everything went out. There was no generator that was going to kick in for the first, 45 minutes or whatever it is. So what the hell do you do, right? There's no PowerPoint slides. There's no microphone.
Is it dark in there too, Steph? Was there some emergency lighting probably? And
well, I think, you've got basic lighting, right? Yeah. But I mean, it's more the I don't have slides anymore. Yeah. Which is what I always tell my executives or speakers, know your content. Worry less about the scripted part and about the slides, and know your content for those moments that, something will happen and you got to keep going. That's why I love those keynote speakers that don't come with, the slides or the video production that accompanies them. They speak from the heart, or they speak from what they know, right? Because they're not relying on slides. They're not relying, and they can keep talking regardless of what's going on around them. So, that's the toughest thing for us as events people is when those things, which are totally, I mean, you can't have your CEO yell at you because the power went out. I mean, it's out of your control. You can't plan
for that. Yeah, you can't.
But I think what you can plan for is, is if that happens, what do you do? Right.
It's really about understanding all the scenarios that could possibly happen, right? And it's also our reaction, right? I think as marketers, what we're all really skilled at is not the overreaction. It's we're so able to pivot. It's the turn of a dime and go, okay, well, now I've got to do this or I've got to do that. And it's not the freak out. Who has time to freak out, right?
But there's some people do though. And so I think if I could give a piece of advice, especially for young people who probably don't have the experience like some of us who are veterans, have been around since Adam was a boy. It's like, you've got to you've got to just build that kind of resilience up a little bit, right? And it's okay to have those moments of, stuff went wrong, because I think it's also a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I think, but for young people who don't have that experience, probably don't react, how we would probably react in a scenario like that. So, if you're out there listening, it's okay sometimes to have these aha moments, because they're a learning opportunity, and it's how you react to them.
Yeah. And that's why postmortems are so helpful after big events, right?
For
because
sure.
you can, document and memorialize kind of what happened. And let's remember next year, to plan for that in case this scenario happens again. I think that's a really valuable step that we want to make sure people don't skip.
Yeah, and just understanding what went wrong, what went well too, right? I think we hear the word postmortem and we think it's like what worked, what didn't, and how do we go forward? And that should be for everything we all do as well.
Yeah, we do that
right?
in every show that we do, regardless of whether it's a simple field event, mixology event, small breakfast event, through to a trade show execution and beyond that, right? I mean, even analyst event, Kerry. It's what could we do a little differently next time? What worked, what didn't work, type thing.
Yeah. Right. Was there enough wine for Carrie? That's the question. The answer is always yes.
For anyone, really.
Steph always makes sure there's enough wine.
Well, but I know, Steph, you're really good at this too. The one thing I always learned when doing events is it's the little things people remember. It's not so it's the little touches you do. It's the details. It's not the big key. I mean, yeah, if you have a really cool keynote, maybe, but it's the little giveaways that you have, or you thought about making sure that maybe there was an early session for a group of people and you made sure there was coffee and something out for them so they weren't. And it's all those little things that go into it that I think makes a difference between an okay event planner and a great event planner when we're doing it. Because I don't know how many times we come up to you and said, oh, you thought of this or that. And, they're just things that kind of move the dial when we're looking at events. So,
yeah, I think and this all stems into, knowing your customer, knowing your attendee, or knowing your audience sometimes. I mean, we do some simple things like if we have our top customers, or however you define who your top customers are, right? Just having a little, something in their room when they check in, right? That says, thank you for being number one, our customer, but thank you for all that you do, right? And it can be as simple as that, to just acknowledging them. I mean, I love nothing more than talk about signage, and we'll come to that aha moment. But from a signage perspective, right, I make a point of even taking headshots of customers. So A, they get their headshot, professional headshot given to them, but B, you don't even tell them you're doing this, but make a poster with their face on it and a quote on it, and stick it up in a conference wall somewhere, and they walk past and they see themselves like on a big whatever it is, right, 10 feet by 12 feet banner, and they go, wow.
Yeah.
It's those little things, right? I mean, it doesn't cost much to do something like that, but it goes further. I mean, everyone wants to come to my customer event that I put on, and
for the stuff goodies. Stuff's got great goodies.
No, it's not so much for the goodies. It's just that over the year we've built this really good, customer event where we invite some press and analysts and customers along, and it's just, and customers love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's great. And I mean,
because they feel loved, right? I think that's what you're saying, Steph.
You're just having a good dinner, but you're also putting people together, fostering that kind of networking and camaraderie between everyone. And then from a press and analyst perspective, it's not like we're there trying to force anything. It's just like casual conversations. And I think even the press and analysts really like that stuff too. It's not forced. It's not a forced interaction, controlled interaction. It's just a nice evening.
Yeah.
Get together.
Absolutely. So what about the signage? You mentioned
Yeah,
that earlier.
so I think
I
if I-
have a feeling there's a story there.
Well, imagine if I got the wrong face on the signage with
That
the
would be
wrong
a
title.
nightmare.
I'm sure that's happened. No,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, from an events perspective, obviously if you're doing big events and things like that, signage is a critical component of that. And, what I do say is, so always allow enough time to bump in, obviously, right? So whether it's 3 days before or how much you're willing to pay for that, for that bump in schedule ahead of time. But make sure you check your signage within the first hour of that bump in. So then if anything goes wrong, you got 47 or 71 hours, depending on your bump in schedule, to fix the problem, which I'm glad we did because, they had printed the wrong file of signage.
Like from a previous
version
event
control,
or
right?
something?
So
Or
like all of the everything?
Yeah, banners
Yeah.
and things like that.
Oh,
So
my gosh.
it's more about version control, right? So
Right.
it's why you should always double, triple check, but obviously you can't check on their end. So,
right.
So when you send the final slide, file, that's why you label it final.
Final.
And double check if they've got the finals. And that's the one that's got. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the challenging thing, right? Because you do, and this is like having a plan ahead of time. So when you're working with your vendors, so scenario A is, okay, we show up and obviously all the wrong signage has been printed or some signage. What's the backup plan, guys? How do you deal with this on site when we're not at a local, you're in your home city or whatever it is. So needless to say, my corporate credit card gets,
smoking.
Budget goes out the door at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean,
the
good news is like, your customers aren't seeing that. Some of the executives have oblivious to all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes, right? So again, it comes back to having, great vendors to work with, doing your kind of, post-mortem or having your backup plans, right? So what happens if this happens? And
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, that's how we learn, right?
It's
It's
how we
okay to
learn.
make mistakes. It's okay to screw up occasionally.
Well, I think that's the point, right? Is, as we've been talking through this whole season is, we have to fail to learn. And that's where, if you never fail, you never learn anything. And that's where, like, if you look at all the points in our career where we've made these mistakes, you're like, okay, I won't be doing that again, right? I mean, and you, some of them are big enough that you go, I'm really never going to do that again. That was a pretty big fuck up.
I mean,
right?
Especially if you get told don't come to work Monday. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're never going to do that again, right? I mean,
no.
I mean, one of my favorite CEOs always said to me, we live in a learn. I think culturally, if you work in an organization where you have that ability to make mistakes and it's okay, I think that's important. The CEO, I said, I said to him once, I said, if I worked at this company where I worked at, that would probably be a fireable offense.
Yeah.
He goes, and that's why you work here. And he goes, because we make mistakes. It's a learning environment. He said, but you won't go make that again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think, again, for all the youngsters out there that are probably listening in, take that on board, right? That's the type of person or company or team you want to go work for, right? Because super important. And then the other thing to think too is I'm a big planner, right? You know this, girls.
Yes.
Love the plan. Right? It's what I tell everyone. Anyone works for me, what's your plan? How are we going to do it? So, it's all about building the right plan, right? So build the plan, you work the plan. Obviously, you're going to tweak it along the way and you're going to achieve it. But you're always going to have that plan, but you're always going to write the plan, work it, execute on it, achieve it. And obviously, you're going to do some tweaking. And success is not just about the arrow going up. It's the journey along the way. So
yeah, I think that's great because it's so true. It's all of the pieces that make us who we are as marketers and just people. So
Yeah. And, I mean, we can't take ourselves too seriously, right? Because we're not curing cancer, right? So, at the end of the day, we really have to just do our best and show up and learn from what we've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing is more rewarding than, so if you think about your event, right? So if it's an internal event, obviously you're doing a sales kickoff event. Obviously you're catering to all our lovely salespeople, right? So, nothing is more rewarding than having an email or a text message or a big hug from a sales guy that said, that's one of the best sales kickoffs we've had, or thank you for all that you do, because we know that, we know what you're doing behind the scenes, right? So that acknowledgement. So I think that's always fun too. But then on the other side, it's like the customers, right? I mean, nothing's more rewarding and fulfilling where, I mean, you've built relationships with customers, and then over time, and especially when you do these events for them, is that they see value in it, right? They want to come back, and they're excited by it, right? So I think that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, I would agree. That's the warm and fuzzy you get from an event afterwards, and just feeling the success, and it's why event people keep coming back and doing events, right? Because it's that.
Yeah.
They say it's what happens after you exercise too, but I don't do that enough to know. The endorphins.
Well, we're not exercise instructors, are we? So it doesn't. There you go.